Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, John Macri, fantasy analyst here at PFF, and I am joined once again for another weekly preview episode by the great Kate Magdziuk. Kate, how's it going? You excited for another week of football?
I'm very excited. We've got an interesting Thursday night football matchup that I'm not sure how to feel about. We'll get excited, get into that. But I just have to say, RIP Zach Moss. I need to start off the show by paying homage to Zach, who's carried not just my fantasy team through the first 4 weeks, or I guess the last 3 weeks, really.
Yeah.
But I just want to say thank you because I think he's probably helped a lot of our listeners as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. We owe a great debt of gratitude to Mr. Zach Moss. And yeah, it seems like Jonathan Taylor is going to be back. Apparently, it was all about just getting healthy and had nothing to do with anything else. And that he's going to play again. We'll see. But yeah, that's it seems like Zach Moss's run here might be coming to an end, which is unfortunate because he was very useful for us. But yeah, I'm excited to go into another stretch of games here for this week. And we got a couple teams on bye week. Cleveland, Tampa Bay, Seattle, and the Chargers are all on a bye week this week. So gives us 2 less games to talk about, but we're still going to go game by game again here. Hit on those key players and matchups throughout as we have each of the past 4 weeks as well. So I'll also be sure to add the timestamps in the episode description again, so people can kind of jump around and find the games that they're looking for. But yeah, excited to get into it. Before we do, I do want to give a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Fabric by Gerber Life. Fall is all about the back to school and back to routine checklist, and the most important task on that list should be securing your family's financial future, starting with life insurance. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it quick, easy, and affordable to protect your family so you can get back to enjoying life. Fabric was designed by parents for parents to help you get a high-quality, surprisingly affordable term life insurance policy in less than 10 minutes. Fabric has flexible policies that fit your family and your budget with quality policies like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 a day. Get your personalized quote in just minutes and then apply when it's convenient for you. It's all online and on your schedule. You can go from start to covered in less than 10 minutes with no health exam required. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/fantasy. That's meetfabric.com/fantasy. meetfabric.com/fantasy. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Insurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. All right, let's get into it here, Kate, and start it off with another Thursday night banger. The Chicago Bears and the Washington Commanders. There are at least some interesting players in this one. So I'll start with you. What are the first things that you're kind of looking for in this one?
Sam Howell, baby. It's going to be Sam Howell season all day, every day. Going back to the well, he's actually still available on a lot of waiver wires. So if you do catch this ahead of Thursday night football and you're in need of a play, double check your waiver wires because I have a feeling, I've got him ranked as a top 7 quarterback this week. This Bears defense ranks second in EPA per play. Bears are allowing the second highest yards per play average in the league, allowing a touchdown on 34% of drives. That's the second highest rate in the league. They're not forcing turnovers, which has really been Sam Howell's only sort of downfall, right? Like this is a perfect game for Sam Howell to just eat up.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had to make some moves to get Sam Howell this week because some of my other options were like Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy. I don't feel good about them as much as I do about Sam Howell going against this Chicago defense. I mean, the Bears have 0 pass rush basically, right? Which is great for a quarterback who has been sacked more than anyone in the league essentially. So yeah, I'm with you 100%. Like you said, this Bears defense, they just rank among the bottom in the league in pretty much every major category. So I am into this game big time for Sam Howell to come through for us. So don't let us down, Sammy. We are looking forward to watching you on Thursday night and winning us some fantasy matchups. I like the call there for top 7 as well. I would hope so. But yeah, it's good for this Washington offense, right? I mean, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson got a little bit more involved last week. But yeah, I feel pretty good about Washington. I don't think there's like a ton to kind of go into there. How about you? Anything else stand out for you for the Washington offense?
I've got Brian Robinson ranked as a top 5 running back
Oh,
in
perfect.
I don't know if that's spicy anymore. But in week 5, yeah, I've got Brian Robinson as a top 5 running back. A running back has scored 15 or more fantasy points against this Bears defense every single week this year. Last week, the Chiefs running back room combined for almost 45 points. Like, I think this could be a really nice spot for Robinson, whose role in particular has been really conducive to like that first, second down work. Especially when they've got a decent lead. On the other side of the ball, Justin Fields coming off his second highest ever PFF passing grade for a single game, just absolutely nailed it from all angles. 335 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Commanders defense definitely going to be a little bit tougher than the other side of the ball here, but both of these teams actually rank second and third in terms of highest percentage of scoring drives allowed in the league, respectively. So like maybe this isn't as bad of a spot for Field as we might think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking for like any basically thread of optimism that I can get for Justin Fields because I was high on him this offseason and it was a very rough start to the year. So like I know it was against a Broncos defense last week that is, I think, even worse than the Bears. But the only thing I guess that concerns me is this Washington defensive line, which is legit, especially now that they have Chase Young back healthy. I'm I guess cautiously optimistic, right, for Fields because we got one really good game and then the 3 pretty poor games. So hoping that this matchup isn't such a detriment that he can kind of continue to ride that momentum. Hopefully he has a little bit more confidence, gets DJ Moore involved again. But yeah, I feel okay about it, but I'm gonna be watching like with my hands over my eyes kind of thing and just hoping for the best here for Justin Fields because yeah, the first 3 weeks definitely scared me quite a bit.
Yeah.
How about,
It showed you just
yeah,
how
go
low
ahead.
that floor is. That's what's
Yeah,
scary.
yeah.
But hopefully we don't see that floor necessarily here on Thursday Night Football.
I hope not. I hope not. I want to get an exciting game for once. But the other thing, the Bears backfield. How you feeling about after last week? Khalil Herbert seemed to kind of take over that RB1 role. You feeling confident about Khalil Herbert this week?
Yeah, I'm gonna fire him up. I think he looked fantastic. Just having like we know Khalil Herbert very tough to tackle, very tough to bring down once he gets going. But I think much like a Zach Moss, he's a guy that can kind of wear on a defense as the game goes on, and I think it really kind of showed and was on full display when he actually got a significant carry load. So I'm hopeful that the Bears, offensive coordinator and this entire roster is going to recognize that. I also love, love, love Roshan Johnson as a player,
Mhm.
but this is Khalil Herbert. I've been so high on based on his skill set and ability to create, yards after contact. This could be a really interesting spot for him, and I'm firing him up, especially after seeing that commitment because it was never a question about talent. It was about this fairly even split that we had seen prior to week 4. And now if we're going to deviate from that, you've probably got a top 15 running back on any given week.
Yeah, yeah. It's that you're looking for nice matchups for him, and especially now that he's got that potentially that clear RB1 role, and that was nice to see. We wanted to see somebody kind of separate there. The split usage had always kind of been concerning, so this was a step in the right direction for sure for Khalil Herbert. But I'm with you. I feel pretty good about firing him up this week as well. Anything else in this Thursday night game?
No, I think we should head into London, baby. We got our
There it is.
London touchdown. I
We
hope
did.
everybody rained out London calling, got our Drake London touchdown, but now he's out and the Buffalo Bills are in, and we have this Jacksonville Jaguars offense still hasn't looked 100% to this point, but again, it feels like this team has kind of been, this culmination of near misses. They have the talent, they have the personnel, but now they get a really tough matchup against this Buffalo Bills defense that I think looks to be the one of the top, if not the top defense in the league right now with the way they're playing, lead the lead with 12 turnovers forced this season, lowest scoring percentage allowed through the first 4 weeks. Not a great matchup for Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, really any of these assets as we look to keep the London games rolling here.
Yeah, yeah. Trevor Lawrence, yeah, just hasn't quite lived up to like his ADP so far. He was being drafted inside the top 10 quarterbacks, right? I think he has just one QB 10 finish on the year, but he's graded really well. He's 84.1 passing grade, which is second among quarterbacks. He's got a 6% big time throw rate, which is tied for fifth. It's just, yeah, the team as a whole, like you said, just kind of having these near misses haven't quite clicked. So they're 2-2 on the year, and this isn't exactly a great team to bounce back against with the Buffalo Bills playing here. So maybe there's some potential for some volume-based production because again, he's playing really well. Maybe this turns into a shootout kind of thing, and we could hope for Calvin Ridley to emerge. There's no Tre'Davious White on Buffalo either, so he could potentially have a nicer matchup, and hopefully we get to see a better Calvin Ridley game because he's kind of been a little Calvin Midley lately. So I would like to see him kind of have a nice bounce back here against the Bills, but yeah, it's not an easy matchup. What about on Buffalo? The Buffalo Bills, we got James Cook, who is getting more goal line touches lately, or at least the last game. So we'll see if that kind of continues that trend here. Hopefully can kind of fend off Damian Harris and Latavius Murray, who ate into the rest of his snaps a little bit, but was at least a positive to see James Cook getting some goal line touches. How do you feel about the Bills running back?
I'm actually feeling a little bit more confident about James Cook here heading into week 5. Interesting note, Damian Harris is dealing with a quote unquote neck issue injury. He's been limited through the week, but like I feel like even with a limited participation, neck injuries are always kind of scary. And when you consider the physicality that goes into
Mhm.
these goal line touches, when you've got these short yardage areas to work with. That's not really a position where I'd want to insert Damian Harris dealing with a neck injury into a game for him just to be piled on by opposing defensive linemen. So I actually think like this might be a game where we see a career high, touchdown or end zone carry rate for James Cook just based on necessity, because again, those are the situations that's probably the last situation I'd wanna put a player in Harris's position in. All around, I don't think there's really any surprises to be taking away from this Buffalo Bills. Like, you're starting your starters, you're starting Stephon Diggs, you're starting Josh Allen, you're starting James Cook, and I think outside of that, like, there's nobody else that I'm really looking to target, but I don't think there are many other players that are probably in most players' consideration, except for maybe Gabe Davis, who has you know certainly had his moments. He's a high
Yeah.
upside guy. How are you feeling about Gabe Davis against this defense?
Yeah, I don't mind it. The Jaguars defense, it doesn't really scare me as far as coverage goes, pass rush. I mean, I know we got Josh Allen versus Josh Allen again this week. But other than that, really, the defense isn't all that intimidating. So I don't mind Gabe Davis, especially considering how well quarterback Josh Allen has been playing so far. And getting him involved, he's still going to get those potential end zone touch looks as well. So I don't mind Gabe Davis. I like him. I've been kind of streaming him here and there, and it's paid off. So yeah, he's one that I would still be interested in this week for sure.
I'm less hot on Gabe Davis this week.
Sure.
Jaguars, like again, this both the offense and the defense. It feels like have kind of had their pulls and shoves, and it feels like there have been very much highs and lows for each of these units here. But the Jaguars right now rank 7th in terms of PFF coverage grade. I do think that I trust Gabe Davis in those situations a little bit less.
Mhm.
But we'll see how that shakes out. I just don't think there's a lot of question marks here in this game in London, which is kind of nice because you know what?
Yeah.
You can set it and forget it and wake up, roll over, turn your TV on, and just watch the game. And you don't have a lot of start sit decisions to make, at least here overseas for me.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think, yeah, the only thing really that I probably want to see is Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. I know Kincaid finally kind of edged out Dawson Knox in snaps this past week. I think it was like one extra snap though. So we'll see if that continues or if that separates anymore. But you're probably still not starting those guys for the most part in most leagues just because of the split there. So let's move on to the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where do we want to start here? Do we want to start with Najee Harris again, or do you want to go somewhere else?
I'd rather go anywhere else, but let's just rip off the Band-Aid here. I mean, Najee
Sure.
Harris, like I it's not just a Najee Harris problem, right? Like this
Yeah.
entire offense has totally gone off the rails. You have Kenny Pickett who dealing with a knee injury at this point. He says he's going to be good to go for week 5, so like there's some stability there, but in terms of, like Pickett's ability to feel out the pocket and avoid pressure and like this offensive line looks terrible. There's just not really anything that I think is reliable enough heading into a matchup against a pretty solid Baltimore Ravens defense. I want to start 0 Pittsburgh Steelers in this game, and I'm not even kidding. 0.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, the Ravens too, like they haven't allowed a single rushing touchdown this season. They're the only team that hasn't done that. And like you said, yeah, Pickett dealing with the knee injury is a concern. He's done a decent job avoiding sacks so far this year, even considering how poor that Pittsburgh O-line has played, but might be a little bit tougher with the injury. The only player like in deep leagues, I've found a little bit of interest in Calvin Austin for the Steelers, who has seen a little bit of a bigger role lately. But Ravens have been a top 5 team in deploying man coverage. Austin is literally the only Pittsburgh wide receiver who has earned an above average mark in fantasy points per route run against man. And he ranks 10th among wide receivers in that regard with 0.74 fantasy points per route run. So seeing him getting a little bit more involved and given his success against man coverage, I maybe like in a deeper league play, if you're looking for somebody and need help on bye weeks, Calvin Austin could be interesting, but it's just this defense that's the scary thing. The Baltimore Ravens still rank first in coverage grade for PFF. So it's not like the most optimistic deep play, but somebody that kind of stood out to me when I was doing the wide receiver man zone coverage report.
The thing about deploying Calvin Austin is you have to trust that somebody's going to get him the ball. And
Yeah.
that is not something that I take for granted at this point. And maybe this is me speaking as a pessimistic Steelers fan. But it doesn't feel great, John. Doesn't feel good. It's not looking bright. Especially, I think the concern, regarding possibly further limitation of Pickett's movement through the pocket, which I don't think is going to help the case whatsoever in terms of this offensive line holding up. Because if the quarterback can't move, that really simplifies, I think further simplifies an already simple offense, which most teams have said is fairly easy to read. Calvin Austin, the one thing he sort of has going for him is his speed. So like get the ball in his
Mhm.
hands and he can do great things with it after the catch. But to that point, you have to get him the ball. So yeah, avoiding all Pittsburgh Steelers if I can. Let's talk about the other side of the ball, who
Sure.
against a struggling Steelers defense could actually prove to be a really interesting game. You have Zay Flowers, who has looked incredible, passes the eye
Yeah.
test. I think has had some nice opportunity here with OBJ out with injury. Rashad Bateman not been healthy. You have both of them back at practice. I still think Zay Flowers is going to be the top target here in this offense for the wide receivers. Obviously, you're playing Mark Andrews, you're playing Lamar Jackson. But how are we feeling about Zay Flowers against the Steelers secondary that the defense, they are great at forcing turnovers here in Pittsburgh, but when it comes to like chunk plays and yardage, it's a force, right? And it's like, no amount of tape is going to be able to help plug the hole and limit the leakage here in the secondary. Patrick Peterson, like, has allowed 4 touchdowns in coverage so far this season. Um, it's not looking good, and I think this could be, like, one of my favorite low-key plays of the week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not scared off of starting Zay Flowers at all this week against the Steelers. I know their pass rush is still a threat, right? But Ravens also get Ronnie Stanley back, I believe, this week potentially. So that could help their offensive line a little bit. Lamar, he's been solid. He's obviously looking for Zay Flowers, and I'm with you. I think Zay Flowers should still be the top target, even if Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman come back this week. Obviously behind Mark Andrews, but yeah, I'm definitely with it. I would be playing Zay Flowers and not concerned at all. Like you said, the Steelers coverage unit right now is struggling. They're struggling.
Yeah, not so good, and, at Zay Flowers, 10 targets in 2 of his 4 matchups so far, at least 48 receiving yards in each of his 4 games as a rookie. Still looking for his first touchdown, but would not be surprised if it came against this Pittsburgh Steelers secondary
Yeah,
at all.
yeah. All right, I like it. Let's go on to the
I
Carolina
don't.
Panthers. That's true. Yeah, I apologize. Yeah, you might not like it as a Steelers fan, but gotta love it as a Zay Flowers fan, right? Let's go to the Panthers at the Detroit Lions. I guess the concerning news for this one, Amon-Ra St. Brown has not practiced now for the second straight day with an abdomen injury. This isn't ideal, obviously. How concerned are you about Amon-Ra St. Brown's availability for this game?
It's gonna be concerning. Definitely going to have to pay very close attention to the Friday report. If he's not practicing still, even in a limited fashion on Friday, I think we have to be planning without him. Which, luckily for the Lions, they are getting wide receiver Jameson Williams back this game.
Mhm.
But even to that point, he's not necessarily a possession receiver. So in this matchup, I'm looking at tight end Sam Laporta as the guy that might be the one to potentially save the day. And he has been saving the day
Yeah.
for pretty much all of our fantasy rosters at this point. He has been a top 5 tight end all season long and doing it as a rookie, and he's looking good, and coming out was one of the better receiving tight ends in this class, and he's kind of become a go-to guy. 27 targets over his first 4 games. Like, you're going to be very, very happy with that. That ranks 4th among all tight ends so far this season. Caught 22 of those, 242 yards and a score. Like, he literally leads all tight ends in receiving yards. And if you told me that Sam Laporta would be that guy right off the bat, I would have told you were absolutely cuckoo crazy. And while the pivot for most might be to JMO, I think that it's going to be Sam Laporta that sees a very, very nice bump in production here in week 5.
Yeah, Sam Laporte has done an awesome job at kind of bucking that rookie tight end trend, right? And he was somebody that we talked a lot about this offseason, and we're high on him and believe that he could kind of come into this offense and be a big part of it. And he's even exceeded my expectations because he's been awesome. And yeah, I'm worried that Amon-Ra St. Brown is not going to play in this game. So we'll see. We'll see what Jameson Williams' usage looks like. I imagine that it probably won't be like a full-time role right away. We kind of know how Dan Campbell is about like snap shares and pitch counts and things like that, especially with his first round picks. So we'll see what happens with Jameson Williams being back, but at least he is back. And then other things for the Lions. I mean, David Montgomery obviously took over the big chunk of running back carries last week. That was just unreal.
That was
So very
ridiculous,
concerning for,
man.
yeah, it was excessive. Like they were rubbing it in our face at that point on Thursday night.
Yes.
Like, yeah, just 3 touchdowns. You couldn't give Jahmyr Gibbs even one, which was frustrating. But yeah, it's hard to expect anything different at this point, especially with Montgomery in the lineup. So I think you're probably rolling him out there, and then Jahmyr Gibbs kind of becomes like a deeper league play, unfortunately. So how about for the
Ugh.
Panthers? So the Panthers apparently are in the market for a wide receiver 1. So obviously they're telling us that they don't leave in Adam Thielen, who,
Aw,
yeah, I know it's sad, right?
that was good.
I'll,
That was a good one.
Yeah, all he's done is be like a top 12 PPR wide receiver through the first month, right? But no, I get it. Thielen, he's I think 54 years old now. Bryce Young is the future there that they want to pair with someone for a long time. Brad Spielberger here went into detail on why Jerry Jeudy is probably the fit that makes the most sense. So that's pretty interesting if they can pull that off. But yeah, how do you feel about this Panthers? Do you still believe in Adam Thielen while he's the number one wide receiver?
I won't stop Thielen.
There we go.
I think for right now, at least, until we see how this, a potential trade situation would shake out. I mean, Thielen, like he provides a veteran presence, which I think was part of the big appeal for signing a guy like Thielen, who's obviously aging, isn't at the top of his game, but he's been kind of the go-to possession guy for Bryce Young, and it feels like he's been a bit of a security blanket for him. He's getting volume, and that's it, like fantasy football. It's not necessarily pretty, but fantasy football is a volume game, and that volume has forced Adam Thielen into some top 5 production. And I think that generally speaking, we can probably count on that to continue. I'm not overly scared about the Detroit Lions in terms of their secondary. Obviously, the biggest question is like, how is Bryce Young going to deal with like some pressure from Aiden Hutchinson? Is that going to force some mistakes, some rookie moments? Because he's had plenty of them. I think that could be the case, but that just makes me even more so gravitate towards Adam Thielen in a moment where, okay, they're going to need to get this ball out quick, right? If you're going to hope to avoid some sacks from Aiden Hutchinson, you need to scheme and get the ball into your wide receiver one's hands as soon as possible. And yeah, I think you start Adam Thielen until there's another body there.
Yeah, for sure. Thielen is like the one probably Carolina Panthers player that I think I feel the best about this week. I'm not starting Bryce Young, like you said. The Panthers, their offensive line has allowed more pressure than anybody in the league at this point, and Aiden Hutchinson is playing on another level right now, so that is a concern. The rest of the Detroit D line is solid as well, so it's also not a great matchup for Miles Sanders as far as the Panthers running backs go. The Lions have allowed the second fewest rushing yards this season. So it could be tough sledding there for Miles Sanders. But yeah, I think Thielen is the one that I would feel best about this week. And I'm definitely comfortable starting him in leagues where I have to.
Yeah, and shout out Chuba Hubbard, who actually
Yeah.
split carries like 50-50 with Miles Sanders last week. I do think that Chuba Hubbard, he's a guy that I have stashed in a number of my fantasy leagues where I have the luxury of maybe an extra bench spot that I'm not in need of right now. So I think he is worth a look. If they do get a top wide receiver and they can get a little bit of rhythm going in this offense, it wouldn't surprise me to see, this 50-50 split continue between Chuba and between Miles Sanders as the year goes on. So just in case you need a stash, I think
Mhm.
it's worth a name, but definitely not starting him or really trying to start Miles Sanders in week 5 against this Lions defense.
Yeah, for sure. I like Chuba Hubbard as well. I got him in a bunch of dynasty leagues, just kind of waiting for him to get that role. He's a fellow Canadian too, so cheering for him to get a starting role. But like you said, the usage has been split, so there's potential. He's been efficient, right? That he could potentially be, the better running back if that usage kind of continues. So I like that call. Let's go on to the Houston Texans and the Atlanta Falcons. All right, where do we want to start here with this game?
Um, Kyle Pitts is
Oh,
the Pitts. You can't play Kyle
man.
Pitts anymore.
Nope.
Um, I think it's worth noting, John, last week on the broadcast, they mentioned that Kyle Pitts still very clearly not 100% following his season-ending knee injury in the 2022 season. So that might be playing a much bigger factor than I think any of us had really thought. Obviously, he and Desmond Ritter not necessarily on the same page. This Pitts or this Falcons pass attack under Desmond Ritter, not anything to write home about. This matchup against the Houston Texans not going to help anything. Playing well in their secondary. I think this has been an interesting unit. You're not starting Kyle Pitts, just to be clear. But the question about Kyle Pitts, I don't think is whether or not you start him. Is he it assuming you cannot get a trade done, is Kyle Pitts droppable in fantasy football?
I think depending on who's available, who you're dropping him for, like I'm not afraid to drop him at this point, basically. Like if there's legitimate options that are out there, I don't know, even like a Luke Musgrave. I would rather have Luke Musgrave at this point because at least I know he's involved in the Packers offense. I know he's got a concussion right now and he might not play this week, so maybe not best to do right away this week, but there's at least that involvement in the offense there, where Kyle Pitts is now less involved this year than he was even last year when it was a concern, right? So I hope you're right. Yeah, if it has to do with the injury, that would explain kind of a lot and why we've seen the decrease in usage, even from already low usage, and why Jonnu Smith is potentially getting more involved. But like if I have Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith on my roster, am I starting Jonnu Smith over him if it's like a deep league where I don't have any other options?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, it's
It
that it's gotten that bad, right? Like it's
it
yeah.
really is. Yeah, not good, but I mean there are, like let's say I Jaden Reed, rookie wide receiver for the Packers. If
Mm,
he's available on my waiver wire, I kind of like his matchup this week going against the Raiders. Like if I'm in need of streaming a wide receiver, and let's say I had Kyle Pitts, maybe I picked up a Sam Laporta, and
mhm.
yeah, drop Kyle Pitts, pick up a Jaden Reed. Like I'm fine moving on, and I do think Jonnu Smith is probably the better play. Obviously, you're playing Bijan Robinson. How do you feel about Drake London against this Houston Texans secondary?
Um, I feel I don't
Your
know, not
silence is
great.
deafening.
Yeah. I want to like Drake London, but this Houston defense, they've been solid. Their coverage unit has actually been really good this year. I could look it up, but yeah, I look like they've been fourth in PFF coverage grade so far this year, 83.9, behind Baltimore, Dallas, and Buffalo, and ahead of San Francisco. So that's pretty good company for a Houston Texans defense that is young and has a lot of interesting players on that defense. They're getting it done still under D'Amico Ryan. So yeah, I just the way that Desmond Ritter's played as well. Like I just don't have the confidence in Drake London. I know he got us the touchdown last week. That was nice to see, London in London, but I'm having a hard time banking on him every week, and this week is probably one where I'm avoiding him.
Yeah, I'm sitting him in any matchup I could afford to. Houston's allowed the 10th fewest passing yards so far this season, tied with the Dallas Cowboys for the fewest passing touchdowns in the league. Um, 31st in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers per game. One of 5 teams to allow just fewer than 2 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers this year. Like, no, no. I think this Texans defense is going to eat Desmond Ritter for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and this is going to be an ugly game. I don't trust this matchup as far as I get through it. But yeah, you're playing Bijan. How about on the Texans side of the ball? They get a matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, who I don't necessarily think are a huge pushover defense either, but
Mhm.
this team's playing pretty well on offense. I think exceeding all expectations. You have Mr. NFL Rookie of the Month, CJ Stroud, still yet to throw his first interception. Damian Pierce, who, like, again, not been efficient, but seeing a lot of volume behind a offensive line riddled with backup. So hasn't translated, but could have had a lot more points on the board last week for your fantasy teams. Had some of those touchdowns come to fruition. Um, this is kind of an interesting spot, and Nico Collins, Tank Debt. Like, where are you headed with this Texans offense against the Atlanta Falcons in Week 5?
Yeah, so I kind of go like two different ways with it, right? Like I like the passing offense this week, but I don't love the backfield this week for the Texans, right? The Falcons defensive line has earned the third highest run defense grade so far this season. Texans offensive line generating just 0.8 rushing yards before contact, which ranks 26th. And Damian Pierce, like you said, he hasn't been efficient. So when he's been contacted within 2 yards or fewer from the line of scrimmage, he's averaging just 1.8 yards per carry, which ranks 55th among 63 qualifying backs. So that part of it does worry me a little bit. He's got a low first down and touchdown rate at just 7.5% when contacted in that range as well, which is, I think, ranks 54th among 60 backs. But yeah, so I don't love Damian Pierce this week, but I do like the Texans offense, passing offense quite a bit, especially CJ Stroud. He's been a great like early season streaming option at quarterback, and in part due to volume that the amount of plays that they've run as a passing offense, which helps, and it helps having some positive matchups in there too. But he's done a lot of his damage from a clean pocket so far this season. He's earned an 88.5 passing grade, which ranks 5th when he isn't pressured. He's also thrown all 6 of his touchdowns from a clean pocket, which includes 3 big-time throws, no turnover-worthy plays, no interceptions. I think he's going to have a lot of clean pockets in this game against that Falcons pass rush, which is one of the lower-ranked pass rush teams in the league as well. So I like the passing offense, the opportunity for Stroud, Tank Dell, Nico Collins, but a little bit lower on Damian Pierce this week.
If you have to pick one between Nico Collins and Tank Dell, who are you playing?
Oh man, it's hard to go against Nico Collins, especially coming off the big week, and Tank Dell coming off a lower week. But I was high on Tank Dell last week. I think we could see that kind of bounce back and forth. I'm gonna go Tank Dell this week.
Okay, I am too, and it's honestly nothing more than an inkling that sets the two apart. So I'm happy to hear that validation.
Yeah, it's an inkling for me too. It's just the feeling based on, I think they're both going to be heavily involved, but if I have to pick one that I think is going to come away with more fantasy points this week, I'm going to go Dell.
Yeah. Yeah. Who would have thought, man? I never thought we would be having this conversation if you asked me 5 weeks ago.
Yeah. It's exciting though. It's an exciting team in Houston. It's nice to have some like optimistic and these young teams kind of on the come up here. So that's been fun to see. All right, before we go any further, I do have another ad read, and this one is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. And how does it work? You pick 2 to 6 players. If they will go more or less than their prize pick projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. So, for example, Thursday night, 2 of the potential plays here: Sam Howell over 1.5 touchdown passes. Kate, I think we're taking that one, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, nice. Smash that over, baby.
Love it. Yeah. And then the other one is DJ Moore over 3.5 receptions. We're feeling pretty confident about Justin Fields. That's got to mean DJ Moore gets involved. So I think we like that one as well. All right. So so we got a couple picks there. You could combine those with a few more for Sunday. At Prize Picks, the important thing too, you aren't competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections. So go to prizepicks.com/fantasy and use code fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/fantasy and use code fantasy for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, let's go to the New York Giants at the Miami Dolphins. Daniel Jones last week. I don't know if you stuck through the whole Monday Night Football game, but that was one of the hardest games to watch, I think, in a long time. He was sacked 11 times. They just kept rolling him out there. He just kept getting hit. Plus the amount of penalties as well. I don't feel like it's going to be all that different here against Vic Fangio's defense and their pass rush. Even though the pass rush has been like league average to just a bit above average, they're still better than what the Seahawks were last week, and they were able to deliver 11 sacks. So Miami potentially gets Jalen Phillips back this week. I think I'm just like blocking the Giants receiving game, Darren Waller included, until further notice. I don't want any part of it after what I saw last week.
Yeah, that was like honestly a very hard performance to watch, and almost to the point where like I was frustrated when they continued to roll him out because I was like, they're going to get him killed out there. This New York Giants offensive line ranking second worst in PFF pass blocking grade. Not much better in terms of their run blocking grade, second worst in the league there as well. Like there's just not a lot to like about what this offensive line has produced. It's not for lack of trying. They're using the draft capital. They're doing their best, but it is not translating whatsoever. This team is just fewest points scored in the league through 4 weeks. Like there's not a lot of upside. I'm sitting pretty much all of these options. Saquon Barkley's active. I'm probably going to be sitting him too, unless I have a much better option. Just with the way this offense is playing out, I do not see this as a matchup where they can even attempt to establish the run based on their opponent. They're not going to, Miami Dolphins are not going to give them any time to get the ball rolling here. So fading this entire offense and just wake me up whenever the season is over for the Giants, because they need a break, man. Daniel Jones, his body probably needs a break after the beating he took in week 4.
Yeah, it was brutal. It's nice that we get Saquon back this week, but like I said, the way that offense is playing, and this is one of the better defenses too. So not overly optimistic about him in his first game back from injury. On the Miami side, somebody that I am interested in, somebody I'm optimistic about getting back on track is Jalen Waddle. The Giants have played the 4th highest rate of man coverage this season. They haven't been great in that regard. They're bottom 10 in yards allowed per coverage target while in man. They rank 27th in team coverage grade while in man. Waddle has had, I would say, a pretty slow start to the year outside of the top 30 PPR wide receivers every single week that he's played. But he does lead the team in receiving grade versus man coverage, which is a top 10 mark in the league at 83.5, 0.41 fantasy points per route run against man, which ranks 21st. This one, I think it's lining up to be a big Jalen Waddle week. I'm betting on seeing that penguin dance in the end zone this week. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's been way too long since we saw the
Yeah.
Waddle.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, but yeah, not worried about this matchup whatsoever. I think this could be just the ticket for a bounce back game. Inject a little bit of life into his game here to appease fantasy managers. You're starting Devin A-Chain, who's just been the offensive production is some of the most ridiculous offensive production we've ever seen. Now, I think like fantasy managers, you have Devin A-Chain, you're starting at, or how do we say his name? I apologize.
Oh, right.
A-Chan?
A-Chan. Yeah.
A-Chan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chan. Yeah.
My apologies, because I need to reset my brain in that regard. But you're starting him, but I don't know that you're necessarily starting Raheem Mostert. Kind of had a rough outing in week 4, and I think 2 fumbles, one of them lost. Like it wasn't necessarily a super clean game. It tough Buffalo Bills defense, but you had Devin Achan totally dominate in the same setting. And I think, the 2 fumbles, that those can be costly mistakes. And if you have a rookie that's shining as well as Achan is, I think you probably continue to get him involved. He's seen a decrease in Mostert has seen a decrease in his carry total over the last 3 weeks. So I don't expect a ton from him this week. And if he's on my roster, even despite the fact that he's scored as a top 5 running back this season so far, I'm holding off inserting him into my lineups until I see another week where he looks a little bit better. And we're hopefully he kind of, again, I just want him to look better, because there was a big gap between the 2 last week, and I think that's the first time we saw that kind of gap between the 2.
Yeah, you're right. And yeah, it was good to see, at least for HN managers, like he out-touched Raheem Mostert, even though Mostert like technically got the start. Like you said, he did have those 2 fumbles. So I do wonder if that played a part into his like limited playing time. So something to kind of be worth monitoring this week. But I don't know how you sit HN, right? Even if he doesn't get the start again, like this is another one of those games where you could see Miami kind of blowing out the Giants, and he just continues to get opportunities late in the game as they close it out, and he's been so efficient. It's been unbelievable. So you have to start him, right? And then Mostert, we'll see. Like you said, I think there might be deeper leagues where he's in play, but don't feel as good about him in your more typical fantasy leagues, 10-team leagues, or things like that. So Achan is still the one for me as well.
For sure.
Let's go on to the New Orleans Saints at the New England Patriots. The Patriots offense. This feels like another one like the Giants, right? Where my level of interest in the Patriots wide receivers, I don't think could be any less at this point. That Mac Jones has struggled as well. There's not a lot here. Like even Ramondre Stevenson has quietly started to fade through the first 4 weeks. So he only had 5 games all of last year with 3 or fewer targets. He already has 3 in the first 4 weeks with three targets. So that's been kind of a concern for me for Ramondre Stevenson, maybe not necessarily getting that work as a receiving back, but I still don't mind him. Like he's still I think you have him, you're rolling him out there and hoping for the best, but we've seen the decline in the last couple of weeks, at least as far as production goes.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. There is one play on and this is not gonna be a pretty play, but I do wanna give this one pick as a potential, like, you are, like, shot in the dark, throw it up against the wall if you are, this is probably more of a dynasty play, but just wanna offer this up, because I thought it was, notable enough. Rookie receiver for the New England Patriots, Demario Douglas, not been overly involved so far this season. But interestingly enough, the Saints cornerback Alante Taylor leads the league in yardage allowed in slot coverage. Demario Douglas leads the team in targets in the slot. Just maybe there could be like something there. If nothing else, maybe a potential DFS play. But like, yeah, I'm not loving anybody on this team. I think there's been a lot of ups and downs, even in that run game. And no. What about Hunter Henry though? Are we feeling good?
Yeah, I still feel good about Hunter Henry. He's kind of been like the man there. He's three games now, 50 plus receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, at least 5 targets per game. I can dig that for a tight end. I'm fine starting Hunter Henry. I know we had this conversation in like I guess it was like week 2, like Hunter Henry over Kyle Pitts. I have not turned back from Hunter Henry over Kyle Pitts.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and it's working. It's
yeah,
worked.
yeah, absolutely, it has. But yeah, as far as the Patriots go, that there's not like a ton there. But on the Saints side, Alvin Kamara returned last week and just put up a ridiculous stat line: 14 targets, 13 receptions for a whopping 33 yards. So 2.5 yards per reception. That was PPR leagues. Obviously, that is elite usage. Non-PPR leagues, it's almost nothing. So it was good to see him kind of at least heavily involved with Jamal Williams still on IR. So how do you feel about Alvin Kamara here against New England?
You know what? I'm kind of a little bit more lukewarm here. I'm wondering, Derek Carr suffered a shoulder injury in week 3, did end up playing in week 4. Part of me wonders if this, huge target share for Alvin Kamara was just an attempt to get the ball out as quickly as
Mhm.
possible, limit hits on Derek Carr. And to that effect, it mostly worked. Only took 2 sacks on the day, so like not terrible. 5.13 sack rate. I don't think that's not the worst you could have seen, but again, that all of that passing product or all of that those passing attempts result in just 127 yards. Like this was just
Mhm.
a disaster, and clearly it didn't work. Like this was a pretty abysmal loss. Just gross inefficiency here, and I think a lot of that was to blame on the usage of Alvin Kamara and that over reliance on targeting the running back position. Because I think
Yeah.
generally speaking, we've seen that is not conducive to upside. That is not, conducive to much in terms of getting an offense going. Usually, that's an indication that there's a crutch. They're in need of a crutch, and
Mhm.
um, I don't know that they can continue to execute in that fashion. They have very talented wide receivers. They've got a talented tight end and Juwan Johnson. Like, they've got too many good weapons not to figure out a way to use them. But um, this might all be dependent on just how healthy Derek Carr really is.
Yeah, I'm with you, and it makes you a little bit concerned about Chris Olave, and obviously Michael Thomas as well. But I mean, yeah, if Carr's not healthy, Jameis, look, we saw Jameis go out there and heave one of his YOLO balls as usual. But yeah, it doesn't have you overly optimistic about the wide receiving options here for New Orleans either. So and also the Patriots have one of the better coverage units in the league as far as defenses go. So yeah, I think lukewarm is the right way to kind of look at this matchup for the Saints.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. No.
All right, let's go on to the Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts. Where do you want to start with this game?
Fire up Anthony Richardson.
Yeah,
Just lock
yeah,
him in. He is an every week start as long as he is active. Just super, super productive. And I don't know that there are a lot of matchups where I am going to look to sit Anthony Richardson. Kind of feels, especially with that touchdown rushing upside that he's
mhm,
shown, propensity for the end zone. Like, I just think great situation, even better situation against this Tennessee Titans defense.
yeah,
Richardson is going to eat,
yeah.
and he is going to eat good this week.
Yeah, number one in fantasy points per dropback so far this year. He's been amazing. I know Nate has him as QB5 this week as well. I think we're all feeling it this week as far as Anthony Richardson goes. 131 rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns so far in basically like 2.5 games, right? So it's just really impressive stuff from Richardson already. The Titans D, like you said, nothing to really be scared about as far as like quarterback play. We saw Deshaun Watson had his best game against them. Justin Herbert threw for 300 plus and a couple touchdowns. Derek Carr threw for 300 plus and a couple touchdowns. Joe Burrow's really been the only one that was kind of mid. Obviously, last week he did not have a good week, but we could talk about that in a little bit. So definitely still like Anthony Richardson this week. And I think Michael Pittman as well. Nick Bodiford here at PFF wrote up Michael Pittman as a player to target in the wide receiver cornerback article as well, which you can find on pff.com. Michael Pittman should be going up against Christian Fulton of the Tennessee Titans, who has a 42.9 coverage grade. So far, he's allowed 190 yards and a touchdown in just 3 games so far this year. So love that for Michael Pittman as well.
Yeah, you love to see the volume that Michael Pittman's been getting. He's been productive. I think far beyond my expectations this season. So yeah, I think it, you fire up your Colts in this
Yeah.
matchup and you don't look back.
Yeah, for sure. And it'll be interesting to see, obviously, if Jonathan Taylor actually plays or not. I don't know. Have they said anything else today other than that he participated in practice?
That's all I've got. But
Okay.
I think that it seems like he's a full go. And
Yeah.
obviously uh, i- if you have Jonathan Taylor, I think you start Jonathan Taylor. Not the best matchup here against the
Mhm.
the Tennessee Titans run defense, but I do think that it stands to reason that there's enough upside there that you start them. And maybe we see a little bit of a split in week 1. Maybe we do get a little bit of Zach Moss. Not comfortable starting him though, obviously. Uh, just not. Yeah, I don't think you can sit him in good faith.
Right.
My favorite measuring stick for whether or not to indulge in these particular matchups is, would I be sick to my stomach if this player went off on my bench? The answer is probably yes for Jonathan Taylor, because I've had to wait 4 weeks to see this
Yeah.
come to fruition. if he goes off in week 1, I will eat my own face off. Like I can't deal with that emotionally, so I start him.
Fair enough, fair enough. We do not wanna see you eat your own face off. That would be,
No, I
terrifying.
I don't either. Like I have to do the podcast next week. Like for those of you watching on
Yeah, yeah.
YouTube, you don't want to see it either. So yeah, I start my Jonathan Taylors. Period.
Nice, nice. Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. And then on the Titans side, how you feeling about maybe potentially DeAndre Hopkins against this Colts coverage unit? Because he hasn't had a ton of success, but the target rate is there for him. So hopefully he's able to produce a decent performance in what should be a plus matchup for him this week.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of into Hopkins this week. Even despite that lack of production, but he has been the go-to guy. Interestingly, Nick Westbrook-Akine has been like the most efficient wide receiver matchup by
Mhm.
far with Ryan Tannehill, 2 touchdowns on the season. Leads the team in passer rating when targeted by Ryan Tannehill. Kind of interesting there,
Mm.
again, in one of these in case of emergency plays. But I think this is a fine matchup for the Tennessee Titans. Not at all scared of the secondary. Um, I think you fire up DeAndre Hopkins and if maybe in a DFS situation or in case of emergency, you can look at Nick Westbrook-Akine because I think the secondary, is going to be the biggest liability here for the Colts.
Yeah, for sure. I like that. All right, let's go to the Cincinnati Bengals at the Arizona Cardinals. A few things to look at as far as injuries go, at least in this game, because Joe Burrow clearly not 100% dealing with that calf injury. He has struggled this year, to say the least. He has not been a great fantasy asset. The team is struggling with him, also hurt. So not great there. And then T. Higgins also potentially going to be out this week with a rib injury. So that probably means more Tyler Boyd, who hasn't really been that effective, which is understandable considering what the Bengals offenses look like so far. And even with T. Higgins in the lineup. So any interest in Joe Burrow, Tyler Boyd this week?
No. Like,
No.
if it's any indication, I would prefer Nick Westbrook-Akine over Tyler Boyd this week. And
There you go.
that's where I'm at with the Cincinnati Bengals offense in general, like, just not been it's not been productive. They're not scoring points. Like, that as simple as that, ranks 2nd in point with 2nd fewest points scored, in the NFL right now, only behind the New York Giants. That is how bad this Bengals team has been, and you know what, like, the immobility of Joe Burrow, who, I think usually has a nice feel for the pocket and can do some exciting things, when he's avoiding pressures. Like, it, Joe Burrow doesn't have that element to his game right now. And, I think we mentioned that with Kenny Pickett
Mhm.
briefly. Like, when you're taking out that element of a quarterback's game and he can't navigate through a pocket as well as he usually does, that can very much change the way this defense is approaching their gameplay of this opposing quarterback and how they're attacking him. Because if he can't move around the pocket, he's injured, he's limited, you're you're having to work with a lot less right there. Because he can't do as much with his legs, and not loving that. This whole team seems just kind of frustrated and off kilter. Trying to avoid, generally speaking. Obviously, you're playing Jamar Chase,
Mhm.
but I think he's sort of the only player that's like a real given for me at this point. T. Higgins, if he plays, not comfortable starting him either. Rib injuries can generally be a pain tolerance thing if there's no lung involvement, and boy, it all it takes is one hit and he could be out of the game. And, even if he is playing, I'm not trusting anyone in this team.
It's hard. They haven't really earned that trust this year, right? It's been tough to watch for the Bengals offense. I mean, I guess like if you're looking for positives out of it, the Cardinals have allowed 8.2 yards per passing attempt this season, which ranks 29th in the league. So they're among the bottom of the league as far as teams that you can attack in the passing game. Jamar Chase, I think that's more of a positive for him. I am still concerned about Joe Burrow. The pass rush for Arizona isn't great either. They don't really have anyone that should give that offensive line, as poor as they've been, give them any struggles. So hopefully that can help Cincinnati kind of, keep Joe Burrow clean and get back on track. But I don't know that I'm starting Joe Burrow this week. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable with it. I think there's better options that are out there. CJ Stroud, even Trevor Lawrence. I know he's facing Buffalo, but I have a little bit more faith in Trevor Lawrence this week. Yeah, Justin
Joe
Fields, who,
Burrow,
yeah,
he's still seeking his first top 20 finish this season.
yeah,
Completing passes at just a 57.5% clip. Like that's not good. That's not Joe
no,
Burrow. And I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying Burrow is
mhm,
trash. But 63.4 or PFF passing grade ranks 23rd among quarterbacks this season. Like this is not the same Joe Burrow
yeah,
when he's not healthy. And I think that's okay.
yeah,
I wouldn't expect him to be because there's a whole element of his game taken away when he doesn't have that ability to navigate that pocket quite as well. It forces you to get the ball out quicker than maybe you want. It that limits the plays that have time to develop if you're trying to get that ball out quickly. Like it it can be tough. And I'm not saying that this Bengals offense is toast. I'm
mhm,
not saying they're not talented, but Burrow, like when I'm looking at, this week, the health, not loving that. In the next few weeks have matchups against the 49ers, the Bills, the Texans, the Ravens. Like this is going to be a very challenging sled for Joe Burrow. And if I can trade him away at this point, I'm gonna look to do it.
yeah.
And that doesn't seem to be the most popular take right now, but It I'm fine dropping him if I can't trade him. Don't yell.
I don't yell, but I hear you. Look, it's
Yeah, I can't really
concerning.
picture you yelling.
Yeah, just
Have you
getting
ever
so
yelled?
mad at the no, not often. Yelling at the TV is about as far as I go. Just
Okay,
getting mad at sports
good.
basically is what'll do
Yeah.
it. But the way that this
Brr.
Bengals offense is played, yeah, it could be enough for me to get upset again. I feel like for Cincinnati, they got to give him a little bit more time to kind of heal up, rehab, and get healthy. So I almost want them to kind of just bench him for 2 weeks and let him get healthy, and because we know what he can be when he's healthy, and those matchups, like you said, coming up are scary. You don't want to go up against the 49ers hobbled on one leg. That's for sure, especially even the Bills. It doesn't look good right now, the outlook for Burrow, at least in the short term here, but still feel good about him for dynasty purposes. But yeah, that's about enough of the Cincinnati Bengals offense. Let's look at the Arizona offense. How are you feeling about Josh Dobbs? Because Nick, shout out Nick again, Bodiford on PFF.com has Josh Dobbs as his QB streamer of the week. Josh Dobbs already has 2 QB8 finishes, also a QB31 and QB16 finish in there. How do you feel about potentially starting Hobbs in this game? He's got, a little bit of rushing upside as well. Any interest there?
Yes, I would start Josh Dobbs over Joe Burrow.
Oh,
Just
there you go.
saying. I'm all over it. So the Cincinnati Bengals, like middle of the pack so far against fantasy quarterbacks this season. Interestingly, to start the season, allowed 2 back-to-back games of quarterbacks with 45 plus rushing yards. That's kind of been the bread and butter right now for Josh Dobbs. He's averaging 35 rushing yards per game. He's just been super productive there, and I think he's far exceeded my expectations. But yeah,
Mhm.
that willingness to run is going to provide him some upside that I don't think Joe Burrow has right now on the other side of the ball.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I mean, at least 40 rushing yards in the past 3 games for Josh Dobbs. He's added a rushing touchdown in there as well. So some encouraging stuff, at least more encouraging than what Joe Burrow has put out there so far. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Josh Dobbs could be a strong streamer. Shout out Nick as well. The other player that I love this week. It's hard not to love James Conner, but again,
Mhm.
this week, the Arizona offensive line has generated the most yards before contact per attempt this season at 2.4. Meanwhile, the Cincinnati defensive line has allowed the most yards before contact per attempt at 2.0. So you're giving James Conner a little bit of space. Anytime that he's been given at least 1 yard before contact this year, he's earned a 91.2 rushing grade, which is tied for third, averages 8.3 yards per carry, which is a top 10 mark, 8 explosive runs, which is third. Bengals have also allowed the second most rushing yards so far on the year. I just love some James Conner this week. His rushing total on DraftKings is at 58.5 for those interested as well. I like that for sure. So he's only missed it once this year, and that was last week against the 49ers. He had 52. So that's understandable against San Francisco, but he's hit over that rushing total every single week otherwise.
Yeah, top 10 running back for me this week. I have him at RB9 right now in my rankings, and I could honestly picture myself being tempted to move him up the ranks uh, slowly but surely throughout the weekend. I think he's such an easy smash play, easy RB1, and so much upside there here for James Conner in week 5.
Yeah, he's given us an excellent return on investment as a 6th-round pick so far this year as well. All right, let's move on to the Philadelphia Eagles at the Los Angeles Rams, where Cooper Kupp could potentially be returning this week as well, maybe. So how do you feel about this? If Kupp comes back, do you think that Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Tutu Atwell can coexist in this Rams offense?
I think I'm probably in line with most people at this point. Like I think you start Cup, you start Nakua, Atwell, kind of the odd man out for me in that
Mhm.
circumstance. But it immediately in the lineup, I think you still start Nakua easily. Atwell, he could maybe on the basis that, maybe Cooper Cup, like they work him back in a little bit more slowly because I don't think he's quite at 100% just yet. Um, so maybe Atwell gets some routes there if Cooper Cup is at all limited in terms of the amount of snaps he sees, the amount of routes he runs. But yeah, Nakua is definitely a lock. I think what's more interesting though, like in this game, because I think like yeah, you have to start those guys. Um, what are we doing with Kyron Williams, who's been a super inefficient running back to this point in the season, but he's been a workhorse, right? Like there's been, very few running backs that you could count on to get as many touches per week as
Yeah.
Williams since the release of Cam Akers. But, 7th most touches among running backs. He's the overall RB4 on the season, but averaging just 3.8 yards per carry. You don't love that. 25 touches per big play. That's the most among any top 15 running back this season. Now gets the Philadelphia Eagles run defense. I don't know that you can sit Williams, but I think you very much have to temper expectations, and they need to be quite low heading into week 5.
Yeah, I think that's the right way of looking at it because yeah, it's the matchup. I think more than anything, the volume, like you said, fantasy football, we love the volume there for Kyron Williams, but this matchup, the Eagles have allowed the fewest rushing yards on the season at 251. They've also only allowed, I think, 2 rushing touchdowns on the year. Um, I I think there's potential to sit Kyron Williams this week. Depending on the league, obviously, I would push him down probably. It's hard. I guess top. He's still probably like pushing top 20 on the fringe of top 20. So he's probably starting in most leagues. But if you do happen to have like a pretty stacked running back roster, there's a decent chance that you can be sitting him, especially if you're getting Jonathan Taylor back or something like that, right? Like I'd rather play Taylor this week than Kyron Williams. So there's potential to sit him, but the volume is too great. It's just the matchup really kind of sucks for running backs.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And then on the Eagles side, the only player that God, Dallas Goedert has just been a complete disappointment this year. He's tight
Sorry,
end 30.
what's his name?
Yeah. So for some reason in the notes it says Dal Ass Goddard because he's
Weird.
been complete ass this week.
Weird.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. Not been good. Tight end 30 in PPR. And this is crazy. I mean, I was high on him coming into the year. I knew there was some risk to that with this offense being as loaded as it is, but tight end 30 through 4 weeks, not a single top 12 finish in any of the weeks. this is way more gross than I could have imagined. I'm definitely concerned at this point. Luckily there's the Sam Laporta's, Luke Musgraves that I could kind of fall back on as my other tight end options if I drafted Dallas Goedert, but I'm not starting him. I'm pretty much benching him across the board right now. How do you feel about Goddard?
Yeah, I'm kind of done. Talked about Dallas Goddard this week in my panic or antic column for
Mhm.
PFF, and yeah, I my temperature check on Dallas Goddard is that it is absolutely time to panic. He's been outscored in fantasy by Andrew Ogletree, Durham Smythe, Josh Oliver. Like,
Oh my god.
it's not good. There was week 4. This was a team that posted 49 points, had a full game and an overtime period, and all Dallas Goedert had was 2 catches on 4 targets for 22 yards. Like, I can find that production on the waiver wire, just, streaming matchups against, the worst tight end defenses. Um, the biggest difference is, he's being targeted on a lower percentage of his runs, just 13.5% of routes run. Is he seeing a target that's a career low for him through 4 weeks? It's definitely interesting though, because we all kind of expected the pecking order of targets for this offense. We knew Dallas Goedert was going to rank 3rd behind AJ Brown, behind Devonta Smith. But what has been so surprising is that it's been Brown who's seen a significant jump in volume,
Mhm.
averaging almost a full 2 targets per game, more than he did last season. And it
Yeah.
seems like those are coming at the expense of Dallas Goedert. I don't know. Like, upside's high, because I do think Dallas Goedert is one of the best tight ends in the NFL. I think he's a great receiver, but the usage is not conducive to fantasy points, or at least consistency, in terms of fantasy production. I don't know. Yeah, you cannot be relying on Dallas Goedert as your tight end 1 or even your tight end 2 at this point.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and maybe it's like some recency bias, but that last game, like you said, was super frustrating with the amount of snaps that they played, the amount of scoring that they did, and just him not being involved at all. It was concerning for sure. So I think you're right that in the Antic or Panic article, it's time to panic. Hopefully he turns it around. This is not one of the best coverage defenses in the league either. They're actually among the bottom in the league. The Rams are, but even that doesn't give me a ton of confidence. It gives me more confidence in AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, but not so much for Dallas Goedert, unfortunately.
Yeah. Uh, Sad days. Sad days.
Anything else from this Eagles Rams game that you want to touch on before we move on?
No, you're starting your Jalen Hurts, your DeAndre Swifts, and you're sadly benching your Dallas Goederts.
Yeah.
RIP.
Yep. RIP Dallas Goddard. All right, let's do one more ad break here. And Manscaped is back. We are brought to you today by Manscaped, who has taken a step up from Balloween to bring your face the cleanest shave it's ever seen. So this season, no need to toil and trouble. Manscaped's all-new Handyman is the best way to get rid of that stubble. Featuring a compact design and next-gen skin-safe technology, the Handyman was designed to give you that smooth finish without the mess of a traditional shave. Get the sweetest treat this Halloween by going to manscaped.com and use code PFF for 20% off plus free shipping. For wet or dry use, feel free to bring this anywhere and everywhere. The compact design and airplane friendliness makes this the perfect travel tool for on the go. And being able to shave up to 3 days growth without the mess of a wet shave is priceless. And for my wolfmen with a little more scruff, Manscaped's Beard Hedger Pro Kit has everything you need to tame your mane. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code PFF for a look as sweet as candy. Get yourself the Handyman from Manscaped. There we go. One of the more tamer Manscaped ads that we've had. So appreciate that. Let's go on to the New York Jets and the Denver Broncos. Where do you want to start? I feel like the Jets are somewhat interesting, right? Because Zach Wilson showed signs of life last week against the Chiefs. Though I'm still a bit concerned that this was like a one game aberration. But he is facing the Broncos D, which is one of the worst in the league. They have league worst team coverage grade by far at 35.9. Same thing with their overall defensive grade at 42.3. They've allowed the third most passing yards this season at 1,210, third most yards after the catch as well. Garrett Wilson has yet to finish higher than wide receiver 22 this year in PPR. This has to be the week, right? The best week of his season so far. I feel like he either finishes as a top 10 PPR wide receiver this week, or I lose all hope in life. So the stakes are high for Garrett Wilson. How do you feel
Yeah,
about
I
that?
think
Yeah,
that's fair. Very fair. Like the thing about going up against a bad secondary unit, right, is that like you still have to get the ball to the receiver. And that wasn't necessarily an issue last week, but we also know that that was kind of an outlier for Zach Wilson. So like it's an interesting spot, I think, for Zach Wilson to be in throughout the season. 21.9% of his passes have been considered catchable but accurate. 20% of his passes uncatchable and inaccurate. Like again, for even if a team is not playing well in coverage, you still have to get the ball to the receiver, which has been that struggle to this point. You're starting Garrett Wilson. You have to. There's not really any sort of matchup that's more conducive to a breakout performance for fantasy. So if it doesn't come this week, I think is we have to really worry. That's going to be the make or break sort of statement for me here is like if Garrett Wilson can't do it now, I don't know that we're going to see the Garrett Wilson that we want to see. Even last week when we saw Zach Wilson play one of his best games, I think that arguably he's ever played. A game where Garrett Wilson saw 14 targets that only amounted in 60 receiving yards. Like, if that's the ceiling, um, you know, it, and it feels like it's close to the ceiling. It might not be
yeah.
the tippity top, but it feels pretty close to it. Um, I don't know that we're going to see the Garrett Wilson we want, but again, if you drafted him, this is the week where you start him and you say, like, if he can't do it now, he's never going to do it.
Yeah. This is exactly how I'm feeling. I'm nervous going into this because it should be, by all accounts, a great matchup for any wide receiver, especially one of the caliber of Garrett Wilson. But then you look at who's throwing him the ball, and like you said, you laid out the numbers as far as uncatchable passes go. This is dating back to last year too, right? Like it was the same struggle. So very concerning, but God, I really hope so. I hope we at least get it this week. Give us one top 10 finish this season, because I think if you could do it, it's against the Broncos. So we'll see what happens. But the other part of the Jets offense here is Breece Hall apparently is not going to be on a pitch count anymore. No limitations, all of that stuff. They've come out and say, and it's a good week for that to happen as well against this Broncos. So we'll see how much of it is true and if he can get back on track. But do you feel okay about starting Breece Hall this week?
Absolutely. Against this Broncos defense, you light anybody and everybody up. Breece Hall, he really, I think, made the case by, he wasn't asked to do much. He hasn't necessarily been a perfect asset, since week one when we saw a ton of chunk plays come. Hasn't been the most efficient in between those chunk plays, but what's really great is that Dalvin Cook has been equally inefficient and has had pretty
Mhm.
much, none of those chunk plays. So, really nice that they've kind of cleared the way now that he's cleared to take more carries. I think you start him. You were probably starting him regardless heading into this matchup. So it's kind of just a nice bit of news added on top of that. And he can break off a run as well as anybody. He showed you that in week one against a much more difficult and
Mhm.
challenging Bills defense. So yeah, like I have Breece Hall ranked as my overall RB6 on the week.
Nice. I love that. Yeah, Brees Hall's. I have hopes here for him as well. And like you said, great matchup. So nice to see that the team isn't going to hold him back, especially considering how inefficient Dalvin Cook has been. So that's a positive there. On the Broncos side, is there any positive you could find in this Broncos offense that you'd want to talk about?
No.
No.
Jaleel McLaughlin, we can talk about him.
Sure.
Javonte Williams dealing with an injury. Didn't practice on Wednesday. We don't have the Thursday practice report at this point, I believe. But has been super, super efficient in the touches that he's received for this Denver Broncos team. The running backs have generally not been efficient here in Denver. But he's kind of been the one bright spot. Had 7 carries, 72 yards last week. Had a little bit of involvement as a receiver once we saw Javonte Williams out of the game. So if you're in need of a play, like he's still available in right around 50% of leagues. So I think you could do a lot worse than him, but not again, just not very excited about this Broncos offense. Meh, especially not against this Jets defense. Nah.
Yeah, the Jets defense is good, right? Like they're top 10 as far as coverage units go. So you don't love it for like Cortland Sutton or Jerry Judy, going up against DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, obviously over there. So not a great matchup for the passing offense of the Denver Broncos. And then, yeah, like you said, Jaleel McLaughlin could be a decent play if Javonte Williams is out, because we didn't see, Samaje Perine immediately step into that clear number one role either. So he just kind of stayed in that passing down back role. So McLaughlin looked decent. Tougher matchup this week for sure. So that'll be the one thing to kind of monitor. But yeah, just feeling kind of, neutral, I guess, about the Broncos run game, but not so great about their passing game.
I think that's fair.
All right, let's go to Kansas City at Minnesota. Well, we always talk about it, but I mean, the Chiefs wide receivers, it's hard not to talk about it because they're so frustrating, but it just continues to kind of be a mess to figure out. Rashee Rice, he's clearly been like a favorite target of Mahomes when he's on the field, but he's just not getting the snaps. Like I think he stands out as a decent, like deep league dart throw each week, pretty much, because the target rate, whether it's versus man or zone, has been among the best on the team. Really impressive numbers against zone as well, which Minnesota is about league average in zone deployment, but 0.87 fantasy points per route run against zone, which is third among wide receivers. He's third in receiving grade with an 89.5 against zone coverage as well. We need to get this guy on the field more. We're going to talk about it every week until it happens, right? But just, yeah, this is, I think you mentioned it last week. He's probably the only one that I feel comfortable if you have to pick one. And that kind of continues this week.
Yeah, I think the heavy usage when he is running routes, like you would think that eventually that is going to translate to having him run more routes. Like you would think that would sort of be a natural line of progression there. Minnesota Vikings, they are leading the league in fantasy points allowed to opposing wide receivers this season. Over 220 yards per game to the position, 5 total touchdowns to wide receivers this year. This has been kind of a fruitful matchup for wide receivers. I think, probably at least one of these wide receivers for the Chiefs is going to score a nice handful of points. Again, I keep going back to Rashee Rice because I think he looks better than every single other wide receiver on the field. And I think Patrick Mahomes thinks it too, because when he's on the field, he targets them. So it's just a matter of getting some of those snaps and hoping for the best. But this should be a higher scoring matchup with some, nice scoring potential. You wouldn't presume that Travis Kelce is going to catch all 50 of the touchdowns that Patrick Mahomes is about to throw. So I think that this would be a shot, like prior to this week, Rashee Rice was kind of my, like, if you really are desperate, you can play him. But this week I have him as my wide receiver 22 overall.
Nice.
I think this is going to be the right matchup for him, and my fingers are crossed that my rankings do not make me look like a huge idiot come weekend.
No, I am with you. I love the matchup, and we just need like Patrick Mahomes to be a better Rushy Rice advocate to Andy Reid and company, and
Mhm.
say we got to get this guy on the field more. He's doing what he can when he's on the field. He's looking for him, like we said. So you do like that a lot for Rushy Rice, but um, on the Minnesota side, the only player that I think, well, that I'm looking to talk about is Alexander Madison. I think it's another positive matchup for him. This is really the third one in a row after a couple of tougher matchups to kick off the year. And then, yeah, positive matchups. Wouldn't you know it, lead to better weeks as far as fantasy production goes. He's had over 90 rushing yards in each game, 5.2 yards per carry. The Chiefs D line ranks 24th in run defense grade. They're allowing 0.1 yard or 1.4 yards before contact per attempt as well, which is below league average. The Vikings O line is third in run blocking grade. So just equals another positive matchup here for Alexander Madison. And I think considering the workload, he's probably somebody that's going to be in your fantasy lineups this week. Again, I'm not overly concerned about Cam Akers getting, a significantly larger role this week.
No, we saw a season low 69% of offensive snaps for Alexander Madison, but it's not far below what he had been playing
Mhm.
prior to that. Still had 18 touches on the week, which you love to see that, and has seen an increase in efficiency every single week this season in terms of his yards per carry. So, I think that again, a lot of what we saw, those struggles came against some challenging defenses, and wouldn't you know it, yeah, once we see some better matchups, he is more productive. It's crazy how that works.
Yeah. Obviously, we're starting Justin Jefferson as well, but how about Jordan Addison? How are you feeling about him? Because he's had a couple of down weeks now. Obviously, yeah, he had a 0 point performance in there as well. So probably not the greatest matchup. So would you be comfortable starting Alexander Madison this week or Jordan Addison? Sorry, they sound the same.
They do sound the same. You know what? No, I am really honestly not. Like I think there's
Yeah.
plenty of scoring potential here, but I also think that the Kansas City Chiefs are playing better on defense than they have in some time, and I don't know that that's necessarily going to be conducive to, um, a great position for Jordan Addison, an inexperienced wide receiver who's obviously playing as the third fiddle here. They're trying to establish the run. Like I think the approach for this, right? The best way to play defense against Patrick Mahomes is to try to keep him off the field. And a great way to do that is by establishing the run if you can. I think that is going to lend itself to again trying to establish the run with Alexander Madison and not necessarily by trying to keep this as a high flying pass attack because you know what? Like you go 3 and out and you hand that ball back to Patrick Mahomes and it takes him all but 45 seconds to march down the field. Or
Yeah.
if you're like they were last week in prime time, they just possess the ball for, another 45 minutes of the game, it feels like, and run out the clock and you never have a chance. Like you have to keep the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. And I think the way they're going to do that is by trying to control this game with the run as best they can with Alexander Madison with that offensive line.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And look, the Chiefs too, their defense allowing just 5.9 passing yards per attempt, which is fourth best in the league as well. So it's not a great matchup for the Minnesota passing game here, and that specifically speaks, I guess, to Jordan Addison because you're starting T.J. Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson. All right, let's go to Sunday night football. The Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. This should be a good one. Who do you want to start with here? Because there's some interesting players on both sides.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting matchup because you've got two of the league's best defenses going toe to toe here. Obviously, both of these teams have plenty of power on offense. The San Francisco 49ers maybe a little bit more, but I also
Mm.
think for as much that the 49ers gain in terms of their offensive edge here, the Cowboys probably have an equal defensive edge over the 49ers. Like this is probably one of the most interesting matchups in the week. So I think we could start on either side of the ball. Let's start with the 49ers. You're
Sure.
obviously starting Christian McCaffrey even against a crazy Dallas Cowboys defense. What are we making of the receiving core though for this 49ers defense? Because I have to or this 49ers offense. I'm a little bit worried. Even for as well as Brock Purdy has executed the offense as he's been asked, is this matchup going to be conducive for uh, you know, anything in terms of these receivers?
Yeah, so I'm super intrigued by this matchup for both sides, like you said, but I'm mostly interested in Brandon Ayuk, who has been amazing so far this year, but he's facing the man heavy Dallas defense. Dallas has deployed the second highest rate of man coverage so far this season, but Brandon Ayuk has earned the second highest receiving grade, a 91.4 against man coverage this season. He's posted more fantasy points per route run, 1.27 against man, than any wide receiver in the league. But Dallas has earned the league's best team coverage grade while in man this year. They've allowed just 3.98 yards per coverage snap, which is fourth best as well. This is like a battle of the Titans matchup here for me with Brandon Ayuk versus this Cowboys defense. I'm very excited for that. I'm very concerned for Brock Purdy going against that Dallas pass rush. I think that's going to play a huge part in what these wide receivers can do. Debo Samuel specifically stands out, but as somebody that I'm a little bit more concerned about. He's had limited success against man coverage, just a 15% target rate against man, 0.32 fantasy points per route run, which is 50th, 57th receiving grade versus man as well at 65.6. So guys like Debo Samuel, George Kittle, who's also not seen like a great target rate on pressure dropbacks. He's sixth on the team in receiving grade with a 52.3 on pressure dropbacks, 11% target rate on those pressure dropbacks, which is fifth on the team, which has led to just 2 catches for 14 yards. So it's hard, right? Tight end is a crap show, as we know. So you're potentially playing George Kittle this week, but where he can be avoided, I think he should be. Same thing with Debo Samuel. McCaffrey and Ayuk are probably the two that I'm playing just because I think they've earned it. But man, it's going to be tough against this Dallas defense. They are very, very good.
Yeah, I could picture this being a very low scoring game
Yeah.
and a bit of a defensive struggle, even despite the amount of talent on both sides of the ball. Kind of with you there. George Kittle, we know, has been just generally kind of a volatile
Mhm.
fantasy asset to begin with. Matchups kind of excluded here. Brendan Ayuk, you love the talent there, but I do think he's been just a little bit safer here. So totally with you there. How about on the Cowboys side of the ball? Because they also have a very tough defensive matchup. I'm not looking you're starting your CD Lambs, you're starting your Tony Pollards because you don't hashtag sit your studs. But I think you have to temper expectations across the board. I am not under any circumstances playing Dak Prescott against this 49ers defense. I'm gravitating away from even tight end Jake Ferguson, who we've been very high on. He's been a top 10 fantasy tight end this season. He's been very involved from a target standpoint, but I think that this is generally just going to be an inefficient day. And you have to trot out those that you must and don't roll the dice with the rest.
Yeah, it's a tough one for like DFS Sunday Night Football showdowns and stuff. Like I don't know how you,
Ugh.
yeah, I don't know how
You
you
have to
pick
play
a
both
roster.
defenses, I feel like. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. If you could put like a defense in maybe one of the wide receiver spots or something like that, it would be
Yeah.
it would be good. Because yeah, even CeeDee Lamb, right? Like he's had really limited production on those pressured dropbacks, and I think there's going to be a ton of them in this game. He has 3 catches for just 42 yards, 61.4 receiving grade in those situations as well, which is fifth on the team. Like you said, it's not that you're sitting him, but you're tempering expectations there. And he, if you can afford to avoid him, if you have like the um, deepest of wide receivers on your roster, then maybe you can afford to bench him. But otherwise, I can't see you benching CD Lamb. It's just like you said, could be a low scoring game. With the potential for a lot of these guys to kind of bust this week, but excited for it to watch maybe some good defense on Sunday Night Football with these pass rushes, I guess.
Hashtag
Uh,
IDP, baby. This is the
yes,
streaming
there we
matchup
go.
for your IDPs, maybe? I don't know. I'm
Oh
not an
yeah, no.
IDP person, but it feels like a good one.
It's a good one for, yeah, Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Micah Parsons, Demarcus Lawrence. They've all got nice matchups here. So yeah, you like that for those guys for sure. Let's go to the final game of the week, Monday Night Football. It is the Green Bay Packers at the Las Vegas Raiders. Kate, not I don't know. This is not a bad matchup for some of our guys here. Where do you want to start with these two teams?
Yeah, let's start with the visiting Green Bay Packers, who, continue, I think, to exceed most of our expectations. It's a decent matchup for Jordan Love. I'm not at all scared of this Raiders secondary. As long as this offensive line can protect Jordan Love, I think that, he's going to be able to deliver this ball, and it's probably going to be a free for all. Just with this receiving core, you have Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. What I'm really kind of intrigued about, though, as one of my favorite receiver options in this game is Jaden Reed, which
Mhm.
rookie wide receiver. Not necessarily like the top of everybody's radar. And like hashtag don't trust your um, rookie wide receivers, whatever your philosophy is. But Jaden Reed, I actually, right now leading the team with 11 red zone targets. This Raiders offense or Raiders defense has allowed the fifth most yards after the catch per reception to receivers, fourth highest touchdown rate in the red zone. I think this is a perfect matchup for Jaden Reed to eat a little bit. And it seems like he's got a really solid connection with Jordan Love. So he's kind of my favorite matchup here against this Raiders defense specifically. But I think generally speaking, we can expect a solid outing from the Green Bay Packers. See a good game from Jordan Love, and maybe see a little bit of a bounce back in terms of that touchdown efficiency that was so high through the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, this feels like another one of those like start your Packers type matchups here against this Raiders defense. I mean, I also really like Romeo Dobbs this week, even with Christian Watson coming back. The Raiders defensive line outside of Supermax Crosby has not been great at creating pressure this year. And then you look at like what Dobbs has done on those clean dropbacks. He's earned a 29.8% target rate, which leads the team, 18 catches, 179 yards, and all three of his touchdowns have come when there was no pressure on the play. So I think Romeo Dobbs is another guy this week. If you got him, you start him along with Christian Watson, along with Jaden Reed, along with Jordan Love. There's potential there for this passing offense to have a big game against the Raiders. And Luke Musgrave, it would be nice if he plays in this game. I don't feel great that he will with the concussion. I don't know. I don't know if anybody, I thought I saw a stat this week that anybody that received a concussion the prior week did not play the following week. So that is concerning, but it was a longer layoff for Luke Musgrave. So that potentially helps him playing on the Thursday last week to the Monday this week, but it does make it tougher. To swap somebody in and out on a Monday night game. So that's me
Yeah,
rambling about
I
Luke
think
Musgrave.
no, we are a pro Luke Musgrave podcast here, but yeah, definitely looking, given the timing on Monday Night Football, looking for other options. If you can find them, I'm not relying on Luke Musgrave. Hopefully, we have, a good amount of insight as to his availability. Like I said, I'm kind of planning for him not to be around. In that case, again, fire up your Packers and YOLO.
Nice, nice. How about on the Raiders side? Because Josh Jacobs, he had a good game last week, but it wasn't necessarily because of his rushing ability. He got a lot of passes, so that helped. But the Packers have also allowed the third most rushing yards this season, 621. They've allowed 5 rushing touchdowns as well. Jacobs has kind of struggled as a runner so far this year, but he's gotten the work as a receiver. He was RB3 last week in PPR, I believe. So should have a better time running the ball this week against the Packers, who have struggled to kind of stop the run. So I feel pretty good about Josh Jacobs again this week.
Yeah, love Josh Jacobs. Have him as a top 3 play this week. Think it's going to be a good day. But I don't think like you have a lot of questions about, Josh Jacobs. Obviously you're also starting Devontae Adams. I think the biggest question in this matchup for me is what do we do with Jacoby Myers? So return to the game. It has played over the last 2 weeks. Generally speaking, I think we've all been slightly surprised by his target share. 16 targets over the last 2 weeks. Did have a down week in week 4, though, against a Chargers defense that I thought this was going to be a matchup where he was going to absolutely eat. So,
Yeah.
how are you feeling about Jacoby Myers at this point? Are you willing to start him? Because I think this is a matchup where I'm sitting back, but I don't know. Am I going to miss out on another 10 target outing for this guy? Because he's had more of them than I expected this season.
Yeah, he's been great, and I think the the Aiden O'Connell thing last week kind of hurt him as well because he didn't play great against the Chargers. We all saw Khalil Mack with the 6 sacks as well, so he just like got destroyed in his first NFL start. So that was a bit of a problem, I think, for me as far as kind of holding back Jacoby Myers. But I think if what's his face Jimmy Garoppolo plays in this game,
What's his
that
face?
what's his handsome face? Yeah.
Yeah.
Jimmy G. Yeah, if he plays in this game, I think that helps Jacoby Myers and helps me feel a little bit better about starting him. Whereas, if Aiden O'Connell's back in there, he showed some promise in the preseason, but I probably don't feel as good about him. There might be better options this week that you can stream over Jacoby Myers because the Packers defense has been a pretty good coverage unit. As much as they've struggled against the run, they've been better defending the pass. So that has me a little bit concerned about Myers, but I feel better. I would start him if if Jimmy Garoppolo's in there.
Okay. I think that's fair. Maybe a what the heck flex.
Yeah, exactly. Just he's looked really good this year, and they've got him involved heavily. So that's the main thing that I'm banking on is just volume with Jimmy G back at the helm. So we'll see if that comes to fruition on Monday night. But anything else in this Monday night football game that you think is worth covering?
No. Go Jaden Reed.
Go Jaden Reed. Yes, let's see it happen. So yeah, other than that, I mean, that is going to do it for another weekly preview here. We covered all the games from week 5. Hopefully you all found that helpful. We appreciate you very much tuning in. A big thank you to Kate for joining me once again to break it all down. Kate, thank you. And please, again, let the good people know what you have going on at pff.com this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow me on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk and follow my work. We've got the in case of emergency waiver wire ads coming out on Friday, and then of course on Tuesdays I've got the antic or panic report and the rushing report coming out on Wednesday. So stay tuned. That'll all be coming up over the next week.
Nice. Yeah, the last minute waiver wire article is a great idea, especially like as the injuries pop up kind of midweek and stuff
Mm-hmm.
can kind of get us scared. So definitely go check out that stuff over on pff.com from Kate. As for me, we got the IDP fantasy report. It's out there. It's got the IDP waiver targets. We recorded the IDP weekly preview last night for those looking for defensive stuff. IDP rankings. We got the wide receiver man zone coverage report also out, going through every single team and how their wide receivers have performed against different coverages this year. And then the offensive line, defensive line matchups to target and avoid will be out on Friday morning. So that's it from me. Nate and I will be back on Monday to recap week 5. Hope you'll all tune into that. Good luck in your matchups this week. And until next time, peace out.